Good morning, everybody. This is YP, and welcome to my Icon Corner. What you just saw was a video montage of St. Katherine Orthodox Church in Stowe, Vermont, and this is the church where Father Emmanuel Lemelson, our guest today, is the priest. And so today, Father Emmanuel will be our guest, and we are going to hear the background, the history, the story of the founding and the building of this chapel. We're going to learn about Father Emmanuel, and so we're happy to have him on. Father Emmanuel is a priest. He is a former, in the Greek Orthodox Church, he's a former hedge fund investor. He's a father, and he also is somebody who has been sued by the government. The Securities and Exchange Commission sued Father Emmanuel, and he won. So we might hear what that was about as well. And so besides that, I want to remind everybody that please like the channel and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And with that, we will add Father Emmanuel to the stage. Welcome, Father Emmanuel, your blessing.
The blessings of the Lord, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's really a tremendous honor to be invited on. Thank you.
Oh, of course. I'm excited to have you on. I'm actually a fan of yours. I have been, when I listen to your podcasts, you're on quite a few podcasts. You're on the internet, but when I listen to them, they are always they're riveting. Your interviews are riveting. So when my friend Cornelius helped to arrange this, shout out to Cornelius, he helped to arrange this interview. So I was very pleased that he did that for us.
Yeah, Cornelius is a tremendous guy. But, you know, I can't take any credit for the podcast. It's really my presbytera that makes it happen. It was her idea, her vision. And if she wasn't on the show, I'm pretty sure no one would watch it. So I can't take any of the credit. But thank you anyways. And I'm going to relay your thoughts to her.
Okay. Well, what I will remind everybody what he's talking about. His podcast is he has a YouTube channel. I'm just going to show it really quickly for everybody. This is his YouTube channel, Father Emmanuel's Reverend Father Emmanuel Lemelson. And so if you just look that up, this is a really, really great show. It's kind of nascent. It's getting started, I understand. But he and his wife, they talk about what's going on in the world from a very high level perspective. And so I would suggest that you should, to my viewers, you should subscribe to his channel. The link is below in the description. So before we get started with the interview, I usually ask for my guests to give a description of themselves, an introduction for people who might not be aware of you and your work and who you are.
Sure. So obviously, I'm Father Emmanuel Lemelson, as you pointed out. Even though I'm a product of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, I'm actually assigned to the Albanian diocese under the Ecumenical Patriarchate, and I have been since, I guess, the day of my ordination. So I was ordained on one day a deacon, and the next day a priest. I was ordained by Archbishop Epiloforos of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, but I was assigned to the diocese under Metropolitan Ilia Katri of blessed memory, a very saintly man. My presbytera, or as we say in Albanian, prifteresha. My presbytera is from Albania. And I often quip that I suffer from ethnic dysphoria. It's not clear. Sometimes I think I'm Albanian even though I don't have a drop of Albanian blood. My mother is from the island of Crete. She grew up in Greece. My father was American. So, and then I've lived all over the world. So a little bit of cultural and ethnic dysphoria, if you will. But I could not be happier with the way things are. The Albanian diocese has been a privilege to serve my entire adult life as a priest. I think it's 15 years now. But prior to that, my entire life was really spent serving the Greek Orthodox Diocese. And when I was a priest in Switzerland for a while, I did serve the metropolis of Geneva, which is a Greek metropolis under the Ecumenical Patriarchate. But I've also served churches in Greece and in Constantinople and Hong Kong, Italy, all over the place. So, yeah. So if I'm not in the Albanian diocese serving, I'm usually in some Greek parish, or I've also served quite a bit in Romanian and Serbian parishes as well, which has been a huge privilege.
Oh, I was completely unaware that you had been an itinerant pastor. So I didn't know you were all over the world. It sounds like that's something I didn't know at all.
Yeah.
And so, a quick question though. I want to get this out of the way. So, you are referred to as Reverend Father. Is that? I always get that mixed up. When do you say Father or Reverend Father or Very Reverend? How does that work?
Well, Daniel, they probably call me a lot worse when I'm not around. Reverend is just, it's an honorarium. Like you might say, Your Honor to a judge, or we say to a bishop, Your Grace, or Your Excellency, or Your Eminence, Your All Holiness. These are just honorariums. But people, I'm sure, can just call me whatever they like. I don't think too much about whatever honors come with the priesthood.
So is that something that you can call every priest Reverend Father, or is that for...
What I tell people, because some people won't even say Father, especially if you're in a secular environment. For example, Greece in the past has been quite secular, believe it or not. An Orthodox country, Orthodox been there for 2,000 years. It's a country of extremes. You have the very faithful and pious element. It's quite amazing. Definitely holiness lives there. And then you have this sort of young generation that feels very almost anti-clerical, very secular, and they just won't say Father. It's not unlike Switzerland or Vermont, which are very secular environments as well. And people ask me, what should I call you? And I asked them some basic questions. I said, well, what do you refer to a judge for you in a courtroom, a secular court? I said, well, Your Honor. I said, what do you call a police officer? They say, officer. I said, well, how do you feel if you just call a priest by their first name? And they pause. It doesn't bother me what people call me. It's how they feel themselves. But it's more of a statement about them than it is the priest, whether or not they choose to say Reverend Father or Father, and so forth. So it really speaks to how you view the office of the priesthood, because really what you're showing is respect for the office of the priesthood, not the individual.
Right. It's interesting. We also have, in America, we have a lot of Protestants who say, call no man Father, and it's just a misinterpretation of the scripture. We don't need to necessarily answer that question. I'm sure it's been answered a million times, but a lot of people will respond to that. Well, what did you call your dad when you were growing up? Did you call him Dad, or did you call him Bill? It's like,
yeah. You know what I think, Daniel? I think when you encounter a true spiritual father, the love, the affection, it's easy. It's very easy. Papa in Greek, patroulimu, my father, with a term of affection. These are terms of affection, of love. Remember that obedience, it cannot be forced. It's a derivative of human freedom. You can't force someone to respect a priest. You can't force them to feel affection towards them. And for those who are really mature spiritually, they say, well, even if the priest is, he's human, he's weak, But the spiritually mature realized that he has a special office, an ontological change that took place with his ordination. For them, calling him father or venerating his hand is very easy. For others, maybe they're at a different place in their life spiritually. They don't want to venerate his hand, even if they come to get the andidron, the blessed bread. They don't want to call him father. That's okay. The priest shouldn't say anything. Sure. Okay. Those people will grow in their faith. It's a blessing if you have encountered a real spiritual father in your lifetime. And then you understand why we refer to the clergy as father. You know, or for in the Greek mindset, in the Greek phronima, we say geronda, elder. O presbyteros in Greek, the presbyter, presbyteros is an elder of the community. If you cannot look up to an elder, if you cannot look up to someone spiritually as a spiritual father, it's a statement about that person, not the priest. The priest shouldn't be offended. It just means that person needs more time on their journey.
Sure. You mentioned you were ordained by the ecumenical patriarch. Was that done in Constantinople, or was he traveling, or where was that? Where did that happen?
No, so it was actually the archbishop of
was
the
it the
Greek Orthodox
archbishop?
Church. Yeah.
Oh, the archbishop. Okay.
Who will likely become the next ecumenical patriarch at any rate. We'll see.
Okay.
God knows. You know, there was a thought to do it in Constantinople, and ultimately it was done in the United States at the Holy Cross, the Greek Orthodox School of Theology and Seminary, where I graduated from. And it was quite a remarkable thing the way it happened, because when I graduated from the seminary, the local hierarch had asked to ordain me, but I just felt unworthy, not prepared. I was I guess I was 27 or 28 when I finished the seminary, 4 years. And I went on to work for 8 years, so I didn't get ordained right away. Eventually, I get a call from His Eminence, Epilephoros in Constantinople, and he says, "I'm coming to America for your ordination." I said, "Maybe you got the wrong Emmanuel, you know? Are you sure about that?" But at the same time, I knew in my own mind that if I said no then, I would never serve the Lord as a priest, which had been a calling for me from a very young age, from the age of 18. So I think I was ordained, I guess I was maybe 33, 34, something like that. I think 33. And it all happened very quickly. Like I said, I was a deacon only for 1 day and a priest the next. And then immediately assigned to the Albanian diocese.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm going to highlight a few comments here. Tim Miller sends in a $20 super chat, and he says, praises. Tim Miller has been supporting the channel a lot. Thank you, Tim Miller. Tim Miller is the one who is motivating me to go live, because he's always sending me money. And if it wasn't for him, I would probably be doing fewer live streams. So thank you to Tim. Again, another $20 super chat from Tim Miller. And he says, 40 was what I was told to give. May God bless this ministry. Amen. And he also says, hi, Father Lemelson.
Hello, Timothy. You're very generous. Glory be to God.
Yes, I owe him, you may not know this, but I'm starting a beard oil business soon. And I owe Timothy some free samples of beard oil. So I'm planning on sending those out soon, but I might have to wait till I get back from my trip that I'm planning soon.
Well, I'd love to hear more about that business when it gets going. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're just almost ready with the, I'll keep in touch with you, but we're almost ready to launch the website. It's called Byzantine Beard, and it's just basically an Orthodox monastic beard oil.
Well, I think you're going to corner the market on that, Daniel.
I know.
I don't know. There's not that many competitors, I don't think.
I don't think there's anybody. I'm surprised nobody's done it yet. So,
well, you better keep it under wraps till you get going.
Right.
Stay in stealth mode.
We're pretty close. We're pretty close. I see you're drinking is that your Coke Zero?
Yeah. Coke better sponsor me one of these days. I probably do more for their brand nowadays than just about anyone else, certainly in Orthodox circles.
So I heard that on your podcast. At the end of every show, it says that you never stop drinking Coke Zero.
But that might be a little hyperbole on the part of Presbytera. I wouldn't say never. I drink water occasionally too.
I'm not a fan of water myself. You know what my papa said about water?
What's that?
Causes cancer.
Water,
Yeah.
not aspartame, the terrible chemicals they put in things like Coke Zero.
Right. Well, at least you're aware of it, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Now, where do I want to steer this? How do I want to steer this conversation? I forgot to mention to the audience that I said that you are a former investment banker or hedge fund manager, that the government sued you and you won.
Yeah.
I also failed to mention that you were asked for a blessing from President Trump. When was that? When did that happen?
That was 2015. It all plays into the story of St. Catherine, all of that.
Does
Believe it
it?
or not. Yeah, it does. It's all woven together. Yeah, it was the first time believe it or not, first time in his life he'd ever asked a priest for a blessing. And he came to the town where I was serving at the time, Keene, New Hampshire, and asked for my blessing. And after that, all hell broke loose.
All hell broke loose?
Yeah.
Please explain.
Well, first I was, the local hierarch did not like that too much. I never understood why. I mean, I think if anyone comes to a priest and asks for a blessing, a priest cannot withhold his blessing. Full stop. Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, doesn't really matter. He also asked me to give a talk at his town hall in Keene. There's a video of it on YouTube you can find. And later on, interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know this, but he began to use some of the phrases I used in that talk. Like at one point I said, New Hampshire has one of the greatest mottos. It's live free or die. And then after that, every time he went to New Hampshire, he would use those words. He would say, New Hampshire has the greatest motto. And he would always sort of replicate that. But, Trump is, in my estimation, in my experience, meeting him and so forth and being in president, I found him quite humble, actually. Very sincere, very genuine. I told this story before, but after he asked for my blessing, I was walking away because a friend of mine, another priest, had given me a ride to this high school where this event was taking place. There's like 4,000 people in this auditorium. And I had to go, and he grabbed me. And he's a germaphobe, they say. He doesn't like to touch people too much. Maybe that's changed, but at the time they were saying that. And it was kind of true. But he grabbed me and he was hugging me and he wouldn't let me go. And people will say what they want about the man, but my interaction with him, I found him very sincere and genuine and humble. And the fact that we talked about respecting the priest, this idea of God over country. I mean, the man bowed his head to ask for a blessing. And I'm not aware of too many people who would do that in public life or political life. So people will say what they will, but that was my experience. And I think he was very grateful. I think he always had a sincere sense of the need for God to be with him, to receive a blessing. You see a lot of other images later on, like clergy and stuff. In 2015, that's before he won any primaries. Everyone kept their distance. He was like a political pariah. Everyone thought it was a sideshow, that he'd never win. And he was being attacked nonstop in the media. But from what I could tell, he was the only one who genuinely thought, I must have the blessings of the Lord to win this position. I believe that's what he was thinking. And after I did pull away and I had to go, I was going out in the hallway and he goes out in the hallway too. We spill out into the hallway in this high school out of the auditorium and all this media attacks him around him. And they're like, do you think you're going to win? And you know what he says? He turns around and says, I know I'm going to win because I just received a blessing from a priest. And as I was walking down the hall, I was just bombarded by all these people. And it was the most surreal experience because they were like touching me, kind of like the faithful in the church touch the vestments of the priest. And they were saying, Father, give me a blessing. And I couldn't, it was a really almost, like I say, a surreal experience. One of the things you would never be able to imagine or plan or anything like that. And just seeing the undulation of the people and the work of sort of the Holy Spirit, really, because of course, many people who do not like Trump or offended by him will say, how could you bless this man? But I would say to them, if you ask for my blessing, whoever you are, whatever you've done, I would never withhold it. And I would hope that if I came before a priest or a bishop, as I often do, I go to the bishop, I say, Your Grace or Your Eminence, please give me your blessing. It's how that cannot be withheld. So, needless to say, but the local hierarch at that point, and more importantly, his chancellor, his protosingelos, we say in Greek, had a complete meltdown. I guess that maybe they felt it was, in opposition to their politics. I don't know, but
Sure.
at that point, I was pretty much blacklisted as a priest. And then the government just came in with a fury. I mean, when I say all hell broke loose, it was the FBI investigating me, tracking me. The FBI, the SEC, which is the U.S. government, the taxpayer. If you look at everyone around Trump, they've all been prosecuted. Now, do you really think every single person around is a criminal? Yeah, a lot of liberals, if you feel in Vermont, of course they're all criminals. No, there is such thing as an unjust prosecution. And at that point, there was a gigantic target on my back. And I don't think I even realized what had been unleashed by that event. So it became the beginning of 10 years of unlawful prosecution. And the person who helped to orchestrate it, somewhat ironically, is actually the brother of the sitting attorney general, Pam Bondi. Her brother, Brad Bondi, is a very corrupt deep state lawyer, total crook, actually. And he was behind it in the shadows, orchestrating it. These deep state lawyers, they don't really have a political ideology. You can't say they're conservative or liberal or Republican or Democrat. Their God is money. And they'll join whatever party is in vogue, whatever the spirit of the time is, just to make sure that the money keeps flowing. And this man's made a ton of money off his corruption. And so he was the one who ultimately helped to orchestrate my unlawful prosecution, which lasted, like I said, 10 years.
And what was that about?
Well, they accused me of fraud, securities fraud, because I criticized a pharmaceutical company called Ligand Pharmaceuticals. Ligand was a company based in San Diego that had a worthless and redundant drug called Promacta. It was a platelet booster. And your platelets would go down when you would take alpha interferon therapy if you had hepatitis C. Hepatitis C was a terrible disease through the end of 2013. But at the end of 2013, Gilead Sciences came up with Sovaldi, which was a cure for hepatitis C. And at that point, hepatitis C was the most deadly virus in the world prior to the pandemic and COVID. But these wise guys at Ligand Pharmaceutical and John Higgins, the CEO, total crook, figured out that if they got what was called the orphan drug status for Promacta, which was a statute in 1983 enacted by Congress to allow companies tax incentives and R&D dollars to develop drugs for small patient populations, that they would continue to invest in them because they were not commercially viable. So they were called orphan drugs. They had to get orphan drug status, and this would give them patent-like protections. So John Higgins and Ligand and company go and get orphan drug status for Promacta, and then they start jacking the price up on it. So instead of investing in the drug to develop it further, and they're, for this small patient population, in this case, the small patient population were Hep C patients on alpha interferon treatments. But that had become antiquated at the end of 2013. So by 2014, I'm saying, what are you guys doing? Why are you still selling Promacta to people? They don't need it. They have a fully curable disease. It was like polio at that point. They didn't need any medications other than Sovaldi. But they went into parts of Eastern Europe and Southern Italy, Southeast Asia, Malaysia, and they would just jack the price up on this drug, Promacta. Like you might have heard of Martin Shkreli and the drug pricing scandals in America. I mean, it's still in the news all the time. Trump has talked about it a great deal. In fact, his first impeachment, he said the pharmaceutical industry was behind it. And I'm here to tell you the pharmaceutical industry is very, very powerful. Ligand's chief licensee was Novartis, which I think is the third or fourth largest drug company in the world, the Swiss pharmaceutical company. And they were making, at the time, $1 billion a year off Promacta. So they didn't really want the fact that Hep C had been cured to stop the money from flowing. And eventually it became a $2 billion a year business for them, Novartis. And Ligand would get a percentage of that. They were sort of the drug dealers. They'd find these odd molecules that had no patent protection. They get orphan drug status, and that would allow them to jack the price up like 5,000%. And as it turns out, the CEO of this company, John Higgins, is the guy who actually put Martin Shkreli in business. So everyone knew Martin Shkreli, by the way, an Albanian guy, kind of an interesting side note. He wound up going to prison. He was like the fall guy, but he was a diversion from what the big guys were doing, the money they were making. This guy was like totally a small player. I mean, the big guys were making billions, but he became a diversion. So Brad Bondi entered the picture, he had friends in the commission and in government. He's close friends with Hester Pierce, Commissioner Hester Pierce. And he's also the former counselor to the current chairman of the SEC, Paul Atkins. And initially, Ligon said, we want to silence this guy for good, Father Lemelson, meaning me. We actually uncovered emails in the discovery process where the executives said, we got to get rid of this guy. Those are really important words. Just hold that thought for a minute. So they bring it to the Boston office of the SEC. They're like, well, he didn't do anything wrong. Everything he said is correct. Like, we're not going to touch this. So then they hire Brad Bondi, an unregistered lobbyist, if you will, goes to the Washington, D.C. office, calls his pals down there, Hester Pierce and his other buddies that he does business with, says, we got to get rid of this guy. And they give them a presentation full of lies. They copy and paste a complaint, charge me publicly, and call me a fraud. I also was a whistleblower. I had filed 5 whistleblower complaints against Ligon Pharmaceuticals for their predatory practice. I mean, these SOBs are going to the hospital and figuring out how to profit off the sick and the dying. I'm going to the hospital to bring them Holy Communion. And, you'll forgive me if I took it personally, but the thing was a fraud from top to bottom. So the government literally goes out, releases false information about me, leaks my whistleblower status to Bloomberg News, which then the entire world picks it up. Like every major financial news media outlet in the world basically repeats this lie. Winston Churchill had this beautiful saying. He said, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on.
And even Tucker Carlson mentions this, right, in his podcast.
Did he?
Did he?
I don't know.
Or I think you had that recently on one of your podcasts.
Yeah, not Tucker. To me, Tucker's a political propagandist. He's not a very good broadcaster. That's just my opinion. But anyways, so yeah, after that, I become another red herring and a diversion. And so that nobody's looking at the actual fraud, which is the sale of Promacta, this redundant, worthless drug with no therapeutic value, making billions for Novartis and Ligand, off the sick and the dying, the most vulnerable in our society. So the sick and the dying will do anything, right, to just extend life a little bit longer. And these pharmaceutical companies, and these are not pharmaceutical companies where their boards and their executive management team are aligned with doctors. They're run by investment bankers. They're all finance guys. John Higgins is a finance guy. And what they did is they got the government to put out false information on the company, patently false, just like about lies about me. This stock shot up and all the insiders sold. They all made a killing. And then the stock later collapsed because everyone sued them. In fact, one of the prominent people that sued them was this guy, John Kalamos, a prominent Greek American, who was an advisor to the former Archbishop Demetrius. He claimed billions in losses on Ligand. And I'm like, man, if you just followed my reports, you would have saved your investors billions, according to your own complaint. And what do? They go to Hellenic College, Holy Cross, my alma mater, and they give the guy an honorary PhD while he's losing billions for his investors. Meanwhile, I'm the pariah, the fraud. I mean, we're talking about Le Monde in France, Der Spiegel in Germany, newspapers in Korea. I mean, the whole world, Russia. I've become the biggest pariah. And it all begins really with the blessing of Trump and these deep state operatives and my criticism of the pharmaceutical industry.
Wow. So I'm glad you said all that because I didn't know the whole story. I just heard the little clip you have on your channel about being sued by
Well, I'll tell you something crazy. When I talk about these guys saying I need to be silenced for good, it really hits home for me because as God would have it, another whistleblower in Vermont, his name was Gregory. My secular name is Gregory. I was born Gregory. I was ordained and baptized Emmanuel. He was my age, Gregory Davis. You can look him up. He too was a whistleblower on a pharmaceutical company located in the same neighborhood as Ligand in San Diego. And he wound up with 2 bullets in his head. So and the CEO of that pharmaceutical company was actually this gay Turkish guy, but the CEO of Ligand was also a gay man. These gay men, they get to be like 50. They're very, very vitriolic. They're very angry men. I'm not judging them for their lifestyle choice, but I think it's noteworthy that, this sort of breed of people coming out of Southern California, San Diego, and their lifestyle, and they're really frauds. They're literally crooks, and they'll kill for profit. I say that all the time. If you're willing to sell a sick person in the hospital a worthless drug at $30,000 a month for 30 pills, like, why wouldn't you knock off a whistleblower? And so there were messages online saying Father Emmanuel should be shot. He should be taken out. And, nobody would really listen. I remember telling the Archbishop at the start, I said, they want to kill me. I don't think he took it seriously. He didn't understand what I'm saying. But now you see in the killing of Charlie Kirk, like, we live in a society where life has so little value. Life is not sacred. And if they can kill Mr. Kirk because he disagreed with them, could you imagine what they could do to someone who threatens a $2 billion revenue stream?
Mm-hmm.
And so poor Gregory Davis, 4 children, just like me, my same name, lives in the same neighborhood as me. The guy's gone because he was a whistleblower and a pharmaceutical executive, CEO, just as I was.
Lord have mercy.
Indeed, I pray for his wife and children all the time. It's a miracle I'm still here.
So you said that this blessing was somehow it was part of the story, the backstory of the founding of your parish. How did that, what was the connection there between the blessing and St. Catherine's?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a little bit more backstory. If I tell you too much, just stop me. Like, Father, that's too much. But if I'm boring you or something, okay?
Go ahead.
So, I was serving in Switzerland for a long time, and I reestablished the community. There had been no priests in southern Switzerland for 40 years. And the Metropolitan Jeremy, was really a very kind and peaceful and wonderful man. And his assistant bishop, Bishop Macarios, they've both eventually retired. But I said, listen, send me to Ticino, send me to Lugano, who's not been a priest for 40 years. I'll reconstitute the community. So they're like, I don't know, we don't really know Father Emmanuel. He's kind of he doesn't have a Greek last name. That's a big strike against you in the Greek community. But the Archbishop, to his credit, I'll be the photos, just picked up phones. Look, this guy doesn't have any economic problems. Just send him there. Let's see what happens. So they're like, fine, come to Geneva, meet with us. I go meet with them, really wonderful hierarchs. And I'm like, okay, fine, you want to do it, do it. So I go to Lugano, I reconstitute the community, the faith will start coming back. We get the community together. Eventually, when I'm coming back to America after this time, we spend a lot of time in the Alps, because that's what you do in Switzerland. Like January rolls around, everyone goes to the Alps. It's like it's a law or something. And we just loved it. I mean, the Alps are so incredibly beautiful, Daniel. It's just unbelievable beauty. And I told Presbyter, I told Priester Escher, I said, when we go back to America, we should try to go to the mountains. And I said, and let the kids keep doing these things, skiing and stuff. And I remembered when I had first met my Presbyter at Holy Cross, we took a trip to Vermont, 25 years ago. And I remember telling her afterwards, I said, maybe one day we'll live in a small village in Vermont and there'll be a small church. And I just had this vision in my head of a small church, I can't explain it. I guess like a sort of foresight maybe. At any rate, so we're sitting in Switzerland and we're getting ready to go back to the United States. And we're Googling. I'm like, oh, what is this? There's a ski resort, Stowe, Vermont. I had never been to Stowe. I said, let's go check that out. So we go up there, and I'm talking to my bishop now in America, the Albanian bishop. And I'm saying, I don't think there's a church. And I don't think any Orthodox church has ever been built in Vermont. And I said, what would you think if I built a chapel up there? Just like a family chapel to get started. And then I'll build a bigger one after that. They said, yeah, I like it. It's a great idea. He was really a saintly man, Metropolitan Elia Katri. He reposed in the Lord just a few years ago. And he liked it, the idea. So he said, well, why don't you go organize the faithful in Stowe, and then you can, build it. And I said, no, I think we'll build it first, and the beauty will attract people. So I understand obedience, and I'm not always obedient. And he said, whatever. So we started construction when we came back. And then that coincided right when I came back to Switzerland. Like the local hierarch in the Greek church was asking me to go to all these local communities like Keene, for example. And I was serving. I love those people, beautiful people in Keene, New Hampshire, all these communities from Rhode Island to Connecticut to Maine. I was going all over the place. They kept calling me and asking me where. But when the thing with Trump happened, they completely blacklisted me. Just very, very harsh. I won't go into all the details. Doesn't actually matter. And then I told the bishop, so look, maybe now is the time to build St. Catherine's. And he said, okay, do it. And he gave me the blessing. He came up and he blessed it. There's a great video on YouTube about the blessing of the ground of St. Catherine's. If you have a chance to watch it, you may like to play it. But he said to me one day, he said, Emmanuel, he said, I never had the opportunity to bless the founding of a church. And that really touched me when he said that, because I had great love and affection for this man. He married us. He was at my ordination. He didn't ordain me, but he was there praying at my ordination. He baptized my children. And he was a very unusual hierarch because he had been married himself. And there aren't too many hierarchs who had lived the married life and then entered into monasticism and were elevated to the rank of hierarch. And so having him as a hierarch and having him bless the founding of that chapel was really a tremendous blessing. It was very, very important. But it was all kind of interconnected with sort of coming back to America, the sort of encounter with Trump, the sort of, Christ saying, that, being recognized in all places but your own home. Here I am, a Greek American, but at this point the Greeks want nothing to do with me, but it doesn't really matter because I have this incredible Albanian bishop who's behind me. And then the founding of St. Catherine begins, and it was just God's will. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. And little did I know why there had never been an Orthodox church actually built in Vermont. Now, to clarify, there are some Orthodox communities. I think there's 2 OCA churches and there's a Greek Orthodox church in Burlington, but they're all converted Protestant churches. So you go into them, they look Protestant. But nobody had actually built a Byzantine church. And it's important because our architecture conveys our theology, Daniel. And so, if you go into a converted Protestant church, of course it's an Orthodox church. But if it looks Protestant, you're losing something in the beauty of our theology, which is conveyed in the architecture, the pendantons, the arches, the dome. These things have a meaning. So, yeah, we did that. We built one. And I had no clue what I was getting into. It turned out to be one of the darkest states in America, where literally, according to the Pew Research Center, has the lowest church attendance, the lowest rate of religious observance in the country. Now, that's a nice way of saying there are a lot of heathens and pagans and anti-Christian people in the state. And you don't have to go far to get over the border in Canada, where they just burn churches down, literally. I mean, we're 45 minutes from the border. So that culture of, they have like these weird cultures of worshiping the trees and stuff. They're pantheists, and like they have a reaction to the church. Many of them, not all of them, many of them. It's really been an experience of dark and of light, Daniel, of seeing sort of the opposition in the world from these mentalities to the church. And at the same time, as the great priest, Father John Peck, once told me, I don't know if you know Father John Peck.
I've had him on the channel.
I admire that guy a great deal. He told me one time, he said, Father, he said, the light shines the brightest in the darkness.
Yep.
I said, okay, that sums it up. Good. And when I first arrived, like I met this Catholic priest at the local Catholic church. He was an older gentleman, maybe 70, actually very, very gentle and kind man. And I was giving him a ride one day, and he just looked at me and said, Father, he said, this is a very dark place. I'm like, what are you talking about? He just said, it's a very dark place. And it stuck with me. Like, I didn't know what he was talking about. And interestingly enough, even geographically, Vermont has some of the least amount of sunshine in the country, in the contiguous United States. We'll have to leave Alaska out. And Lamoille County, where St. Catherine's is located, has some of the fewest days of sunshine in the country. So it is a physically dark place, but spiritually, it's a very dark place. And I can tell you more about that if you're interested into what factors into making Vermont so dark. If you want to hear more about it.
Yes, I do. That's what this interview is about. And we had a little bit of competition going on before, as far as your local, being the darkest area. I mentioned to you that Corvallis, where I live, this is just according to a newspaper article from maybe a decade ago. They say it's the most unchurched city in the country. I don't know where they got that. Where they got that from,
Yeah, the Northwest is out there. I spent 10 years in Seattle. I know it's.
Did you?
Yeah, it's out there, the Northwest. Also very dark. King County in Seattle is also geographically dark, but a lot of spiritual darkness as well. Oregon is a lot of the same problems as Vermont. A lot of it is fueled by drugs, frankly. And, every drug in the world is, permitted in Oregon, just like Vermont. Oh, sure. I mean, all these drugs open a portal to the devil, into people's minds. It's a big business too. It's over $130 million business in Vermont. They got over 110 dispensaries now. There's 5 of them within 5-minute drive of St. Catherine's. Right. I often quip, if I had built a dispensary, heck, if I had built a brothel, they'd probably build a statue to me. But you wouldn't believe the opposition I faced just building St. Catherine's. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, Vermont is a state that, go ahead.
I want to hear all about it.
Well, let me just tell you a little more about Vermont, first of all. So, Vermont is a state that, for example, has death tourism. People come from around the country when they want to essentially commit suicide or assisted suicide. I don't like to call it assisted. It's assisted murder, because for the doctor, it's murder. For the person taking their own life, it's suicide. But, it's under their Act 39. And I'll never forget this traveling nurse. Hundreds of people have come to St. Catherine's. It's like almost like a pilgrimage site. It's really, it blows my mind. But I remember this catechumen had come from Indiana, this wonderful young woman, very faithful, very, very intelligent. And she was a nurse because they have major labor shortages in Vermont because they don't have children. They closed birthing centers and there's almost no birth rate. And they can't figure it out. They espouse all this LGBTQ ideology and same-sex marriage and abortion at any stage of gestation, including late-term abortions and partial birth abortions under their Proposition 5. We got this whack job governor, Phil Scott, who says he's a Republican, but I think he just wants to be liked by his constituents, like so many other politicians. At any rate, she came to St. Catherine, so she called me late one night. She was having an anxiety attack. She said, "Father, I have never seen darkness like this. They're literally leading the elderly to death. They're literally killing them." And so you look at this death tourism they've got going on. It's a business. These drugs that are used, they're not unlike Promacta and Ligand Pharmaceuticals. These large pharmaceutical companies that use these drugs to kill people, they increase the price on them dramatically right before those pieces of legislation pass. They know it's going to pass, and they jack the price up like 5,000. So it's a business. Don't forget that. It has nothing to do with mercy or compassion. It certainly has nothing to do with a good death. The word euthanasia is such a misnomer. There's nothing good about murder and suicide. So you've got these late stage, you'll go into a middle school in the public schools here and you'll see like signs for abortion promoting it. Rainbow flags everywhere. No, not even any American flags. It is a state living in darkness. And that's what that priest was trying to tell me. And so that was the cultural milieu, the environment in which, this idea of building this chapel had begun. And then once we started on it, like the opposition began almost immediately. The first contractor we hired absconded with like $40,000. And then a few people came along who were really almost like angels to help at the same time. So there's this idea of dark and light constantly. So as much as there's darkness, there's all this sort of light piercing the darkness, the bishop and some of these people who came out of nowhere to help. It was this gentleman named Jacques, and he was just giving so much to try to help. And he came to me early on. I said, "Father, they're going to be like hyenas. They're going to attack you and they're going to try to stop you. You don't understand." I'm like, this guy, maybe he's a little crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It was prophetic. What we faced from people who would come on that job, they would be cursing and throwing cigarette butts at it and leaving hate messages. Like nonstop attacks. Like if you go just south to Massachusetts or even New Hampshire, there are dozens and dozens of Orthodox communities. Same thing in Massachusetts. You've got these large immigrant populations. You've got the Greeks, you've got the Syrians, you've got the Antiochians, you've got the Albanians, you've got like you couldn't get away with that in a state like that. But Vermont is the most white and the most homogenous and the most godless state in America. There's only a handful of Orthodox in the entire state. It was about 600,000 people. So for these people, the church, and they probably couldn't articulate why it was an offense that it was there. And so we just faced one obstacle after another. But I told these guys who would come and they would put up these, these roadblocks and say, "Look, I want to be dead in like 25 years, and you're probably going to be dead too. But this church is going to be here still, and it's a house to worship the living God. So if we're going to go to war, we're going to go to war, but you're not going to win." Some of them got the message and did a great job. Other ones are still fighting me to this day. Now, eventually, this chapel is built on what's called Billionaires Row in Stowe. It's a huge concentration of wealth because all these rich guys from New York and Boston love to ski in Stowe. So they come and they buy up all this land. And St. Catherine's is built on the most prime location in all of Stowe, up on a hill overlooking Mount Mansfield, the tallest peak in Vermont. So 3 billionaires live right around St. Catherine, and they hate it. So they petitioned for it either to be painted black, because all their new construction in town is painted black, or to be torn down. So envision this. On the one hand, you got like a half dozen contractors who can't explain it, but they're having a reaction to the establishment of this chapel. Then you've got 3 billionaires. One is the co-founder of one of the largest hedge funds in Boston, very well-known fund. I'm not going to say the name. Another one was an heir to the largest chemical fortune in Switzerland. And the third is the founder of one of the largest retail chains in America. And they all live right around St. Catherine's, literally in adjacent lots with their huge estates. So envision your mind, you got like half a dozen contractors. You got a whole bunch of people who just do not like Father Emmanuel. They don't want the church there. And they're backed by billionaires, right? And they've got like limitless funds to fight legally. And you got Father Emmanuel, this dumb priest on the other side. That is so unfair to them. That's what I thought, at least. So
I thought I thought you meant unfair to you.
No, that's all they had on the other side. Come on. They didn't have a chance, Daniel. What are you talking about? So it continued. And the bishop at one point came and said, "Father, you're a little aggressive, maybe." I said, "Well, your grace." It was his grace at that time. He didn't become a metropolitan. I said, "You once told me the priest in the parish, if he's weak, parish council will be strong." In Greek, we have a word for that. It's leokratia. It means the people rule. It's a very Protestant mindset. Like you ever go into a church where the priest, they treat him like an employee? You probably don't know anything about that because you're in the Russian church.
Exactly. Yeah.
and they really respect the priest. But there's a part of the Greek community that for some reason I don't know, maybe they want to be Protestant. But I said, well, you know, your grace, when it comes to building a church, it's the same thing. Either the contractor's going to call the shots or the priest is going to. So like things would get done wrong. Like they'd go and they'd build something wrong and say, guys, we've got to fix it. I'm sorry. They'd be like, no, they'd be throwing hammers and like throwing a fit and cussing. So you can throw a fit if you want, but we're going to fix that. This isn't a restaurant. It's not a beer hall. It's here to worship the living God, and its beauty has to reflect that. Some of them didn't like that too much, but anyways, it got built. And I remember this other contractor. His name was Mike. It's like an angel. I don't know. He disappeared. I could never find him again. He came to me one day, and he, again, in the midst of all this darkness, he comes. He says, "You know, Father," he said, "this isn't about building St. Catherine." I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course it is. We're building a chapel. Can't you see? Open your eyes. He said, no, Father, it's not about that. So what's it about? I said, God can put a chapel wherever he wants. He can put a church wherever he wants. He actually doesn't even need more churches. There's plenty of them. He's right. He said, it's about building you. I said, I don't know what he's talking about. But later I came to understand he was right. I couldn't find this guy again. He disappears like an angel. It's weird. You know? And I remember, you know, am I boring you with all this? Am I talking too much?
Oh, this is what we're here for. Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right. I remember this other contractor came along, and he was kind of a young guy. I didn't really have anything against him. I don't think he was evil. He's just a little bit bad sometimes. And he wound up going to work for Vince McMahon, the founder of WWE, and I had just crashed WWE stock. So Vince McMahon did not like me. Took $800 million off their market cap. I said that they were committing fraud. Later on, it turned out to be true. It was revealed. It took about 9 years. Anyway, so he's like, Vince McMahon wants me to go to work for him. Vince McMahon has a place up at the Lodge, and along with John Travolta and a few other people. And I said, well, you know, you got to finish this job. You know, you can't just leave the job. It's the middle of the winter. It's like minus 30 degrees, whatever. And he later went and he took this tarp off the top of the chapel when it wasn't enclosed yet. And we had this huge like ice and sleet and rainstorm. And I was really very saddened because I thought, oh my gosh, the chapel is going to get flooded. And that night I remember laying in my bed and I was praying. I always prayed ever since we laid the slab. I'd go and pray at St. Catherine's. And I was just praying the Jesus prayer. And, you know, this sort of collusion had begun to emerge with some of these contractors. They all know each other. They're probably cousins, frankly. They literally are. And I knew the chapel would get flooded and I'd have to go in there in the morning and sweep it all out. I just was hoping that the damage wouldn't be too severe. And I just remember laying in bed and at one point sensing, honestly, Daniel, the presence of, you know, the devil standing next to me. And it didn't really bother me because I was just praying the Jesus prayer. I just felt this ugly presence. And then it disappeared after a moment. And my presbytera came in from her bedroom a little while later and said, you know, I had this feeling that the devil was attacking you. And she said, I was praying and saying that he should go away from you. And yeah, quite an experience. And then the next day, of course, I was sweeping all the water out of the chapel. It was just back to work.
So it was all temptation from the evil one.
Yeah, I think so. But, you know, once we laid that slab, you know, every morning I would get up and snowshoe to the chapel. I would go on like a 4 to 5 mile trek. And I would go in there, even when there was no roof, just walls and a slab. And every day I would get on my knees. As soon as that was there, the altar, the step to the altar, and on my knees where the iconostation would be. And I would pray on my knees, Lord, help me finish this chapel. It's not a big chapel. You wouldn't think it should be so difficult, but the amount of opposition, it's inexplicable. It couldn't have just been ordinary secular issues.
Right.
And then at this time, of course, the SEC is coming after me. The international media has called me a fraud. You know, I've got these billionaires circling with limitless budgets to fight legal battles. And later I would even learn, to tell you the truth, there were elements within the institutional church as well. That chancellor I mentioned earlier in the Boston diocese, you know, it turned out him and this other lawyer named George Sugarakis, he's the corporate counsel for their diocese, I would later learn was actually collaborating with the SEC. So while I'm like saying, hey, this company's a fraud, they're preying on the sick and the dying, I've got sort of my own people within the church, if you will, for whatever reasons best known to themselves, feeling that they need to, in the shadows as well, do what they need to do. And Sugarakis, I'll tell you, I really thought to myself, what a disgrace to the Greek people. What a disgrace to the Cretan people, especially as he's a Cretan guy. Cretan men are strong. This guy was a total beta. And just learning what he had been doing behind the scenes, I thought, don't you realize people's lives are on the line? People are dying, sick and dying. I mean, really just a total Judas. So, to say it was a pile on is an understatement. But I would call my bishop, as every step went along, and I would say, Your Grace, I'm going to fight. Give me your blessing. And he would just give me the most beautiful blessings and say, yeah, do it. Fight. And it was weird. Like you would think, okay, maybe the scales are tipped a little bit towards these forces, but the more I fought, the more energy I got. And I would say to all of us, well, you have to kill me to stop me. So, just to be clear.
So it's obvious from what you're describing to me that you had quite a lot of opposition, which to me kind of makes me sound like you were probably on the right path, creating this chapel. Why don't we do a little bit of a segue here and show another one of the videos, because this chapel is just stunning. And so I want to play another one of the videos that you sent me for the audience, just they can get a sense of what it looks like inside. So I'm going to play that right now.
My son made this video when he was like 11. I'll tell you a little bit about the construction materials if you want, since you showed it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's hear it.
So that dome, which is an unconventional dome because it's silver, a lot of times you see gold on the domes. The dome is partially modeled after the dome at the Chapel of Holy Cross in Boston, which is a chapel I love very much. And I was actually involved in the design of that with the architect. We had a great architect, and it was Chris Kamages. But we worked together on that and a few things. But that's all hand-polished stainless steel from Germany. And those Justinian crosses were all made by hand. And the bishop would come down when the craftsmen were there working. We actually had great roofers. Not all of our contractors bad. Actually, honestly, like 75% were really great. But the roofers were fantastic. That's 1.5-inch real slate. And that's granite from local quarries. So everything is real on St. Catherine's. None of this faux stone and fake roofing. And there's actual, I think it's 3/8-inch copper in between each layer of the slate roof. So, this chapel, you could park a tank on it. It's going to last 400 years, probably longer. You see wooden structures in Massachusetts that are 400 years old. They're still standing. The stave churches in Scandinavia, That's partially what we modeled it after. But when we came up with the idea, I went to the bishop and I said, look, why don't we create a chapel that looks like it belongs in Vermont? I don't want to make it look like it's plucked off a Greek island. I don't want it to be white with a blue dome. Like you see this, like, I think it's in Nashville, New Hampshire. I know you see it all over America. Like there's this nostalgia from Greece. But the reality is that Christ's message is directed out to the world. The church, it exists where it belongs. And I said, look, let's use local materials, local granite and local slate and local everything we can get. We have, actually, it's African mahogany around the windows, but that's for climate reasons. And we have French oak on the inside. But to the extent we could, use as much local materials as we could. Because I said, look, our church is apostolic. It's directed out to the world. The moment Christ's love becomes directed inward, the moment it becomes for a certain ethnic group or an ethnic club, it's ethnophilitism. It's a heresy. Like this church belongs to the people that it will serve in this area. So he liked the idea. I said, but as you get in closer and you come inside, I wanted to really tie into the magnificent history and richness of our holy tradition. So that's when you go inside and then you start to see, the hand-carved French oak, and all of that stuff came from Greece. And it was kind of interesting because, we were making like the woodwork was being carved in Greece while we were building the chapel. And we had a fantastic engineer. This guy was an MIT graduate, and he did such a magnificent job. I mean, the amount of a chapel like that's 2 stories, has no mid-level. So when there's high wind loads, as there are in Vermont, you have to really pay attention to the engineering, even though there's almost no regulations in Vermont, by the way. It's like a free-for-all. It's not like Massachusetts. But he made some changes towards the end for the wind loads. I'm like, oh boy, I don't know if that Okunasasa is going to fit now. We're making it like 6,000 miles away. And he had this extra layer of plywood, and I was really worried. And then it showed up, it fit perfectly. I mean, you just can't explain some of that stuff, because this stuff, it's expensive. It's all handmade. And the fact it fit was incredible. And then we just had an amazing iconographer. We're still doing the iconography, but this guy, Anecdotes, just a very, very pious, amazing young man. So really God sent us the people we needed when we needed them. And that's how it came together. So a little background on the materials. We really decided to use the highest quality materials we could, because we said this should be here as long as possible. And I'd call the bishop. I said, well, what do you think of this? What if we use this sort of bronze, African mahogany with almost a mirror on the dome? It's not been seen before, this color scheme. It's very unusual. And then we'll use this sort of reverse board and batten with, we used a pine tar oil, like the stave churches in Scandinavia, which some of them are 1,000 years old. They're still standing. He said, I love it. It's great. So every step of the way, we got his blessing. I was really anxious while building it that I might do something wrong, because, it's not like the Protestant church where we just do whatever we want, right? We have to follow a tradition, because the tradition itself is instructive. And so I'd never built a church before. And so, but having the bishop there and asking for his advice and guidance and blessing each disciple, it was fantastic. And glory be to God, it didn't succeed because of me. It succeeded despite me. It was really the work of St. Catherine. And if you need any further proof of that, it was not only the constant prayers through her intercession, like I talked about earlier, praying constantly through her intercession, but, there was this gigantic nor'easter, I think it was 2019, and all over Vermont, like massive trees were felled. And Vermont pines, they're very tall, like 100 feet tall, and they have very shallow root systems. This chapel is right in the middle of the forest. And 600-foot pine trees fell in this nor'easter. And Daniel, I kid you not, there's a picture on the Facebook page. These trees fell in a perfect arch around St. Catherine's, within feet of the chapel, but not one branch touched that chapel. If you want to see the history of construction, and if you want to see photographs of that, it's all on the Facebook page for St. Catherine. But if that's not a miracle, called the bishop, Your Grace, 600-foot trees, 600-foot trees, 6 trees that were 100 foot tall, fell in a perfect arch around the chapel. Not one touched the chapel. He said that was the intercession of St. Catherine. I couldn't agree more. That was exactly my thought, Your Grace. It was a miracle.
Yeah. So there is a miracle involved with the quite evident miracle.
Yeah. And then I'll tell you, if I can, Daniel, very soon as we started completion, just amazing things started. I want to talk a little bit about the light, because I talk so much about the darkness. And just to give you a little bit more background on the darkness, the hate messages we just, I'll wrap it up. But, like you look at, like, there's the local brewery in Stowe. It's a big business. They produce 700,000 gallons of alcohol a year. They put into the local market. Like, we need more alcohol. Vermont has one of the highest rates of adult drug use in the country, the highest rate, actually, of adult drug use in the country. And I would just remember the CEO sending this hate, and I'm like, I've never even met this person. But we have this local ice cream brand, for example. It's called Sisters of Anarchy, and their logo, which includes an ice cream cone, is an upside down pentagram. So when I say it's dark spiritually, I'm not kidding. This is all over the retail stores now. So you're showing children symbols of the occult, an upside down pentagram, and using an ice cream cone to draw them in. So it's not just the abortion, it's not just the death tourism, it's the occult everywhere in the local businesses. And so here I am building St. Catherine, never asked for a penny for anyone, never accepted a penny from anyone. And, we've got these local businesses, and they'll tell you they're total Marxist socialists in Vermont, and Bernie Sanders, their hero, and all that, taxation 90%, yet they actually love money, like this brewery, it's definitely a for-profit operation. St. Catherine's has never been a for-profit anything. It was totally self-funded. At any rate, as we got close to being complete, the very first person who showed up was this older woman. Her name was Irini, and she was a beautiful woman. She was 80 years old. And she came to me, and she said, she was wearing all black. She said, "Father, I heard there was a chapel being built in Stowe. And I've been driving around for months trying to find it. And I eventually was driving, and I saw this dome in the forest." And she came to me and she told me her life story. And she was almost like a lay monastic, because she was a beautiful young woman. She was still a beautiful woman at age, but she had married very young, and her husband passed away just a few years after their marriage. She never remarried. She lived like a monastic. And she had not been to church the whole time she'd been living in Vermont, because there were no churches that were easily accessible. And then very soon thereafter, a Greek young man showed up, and he wanted to baptize his children there. And he had this wonderful wife from Macedonia, and we would baptize their children. And then slowly there turned out to be this sort of nascent Moldovan community. So the chapel is almost like pan-Orthodox. And I've really been touched by the Moldovans, because they're really quite different than the Southern Europeans. They're not Macedonian, Greek, or Italian, whatever. They're Latins, but some part of the Moldovan community is also Slavic. And so culturally they're different. And but this community there, these young families are so pious, and they just beautiful families. And whether it's the summer when the doors are open in St. Catherine's, you can see the open meadows and the mountains, or if it's the winter when the snow muffles all the sound, you can't hear anything. You can't hear anything anyways, because it's the middle of the forest. These beautiful people were showing up, and their faith. And for the priest, I have to tell you, the oligos, we say in Greek, the shepherd, without his flock, he doesn't feel like a shepherd. And these people were coming from quite far away, almost all of them, and the piety they were showing. And I was really touched by it eventually. I mean, they really reached me, and I was moved to a sort of poignance. And when COVID struck, I'll tell you, Daniel, and the churches started closing, I had a profound experience because I would ask myself, why was St. Catherine so difficult to build, and why did it take so long? And sometimes you even question yourself. You said, well, did I do the wrong thing? What was that kind of thing? All this money and time and energy and conflict. But when COVID came and St. Catherine's was open, it wasn't closing, and the faithful could come in the sanctuary of St. Catherine's and light a candle, the peace, the quiet. I said, I understand now. You can only see God's will in hindsight. And now sometimes there's so many people that come and they don't fit. And, literally hundreds of people have come from everywhere. They come from around the country, believe it or not. A young man reached out to me a few months ago. He said, "Father," he told me this incredibly beautiful story. He said, "I was at this monastery in Canada, and the Hierontisa, the nun, the abbess, told him, you should buy a home in Stowe." And he left very, very perturbed. He said, "I can't believe she gave me this advice, because there's no place of worship in Stowe." And he was very distraught. He sends me this long, beautiful letter. I'm just paraphrasing now. He said, "But then I found St. Catherine's." And it kind of gave me goosebumps. I listened to this story. And so these stories, these amazing stories, despite the difficulty, despite the endless lawsuits, despite the attempts to destroy St. Catherine's, really, it's nothing. And let me repeat that. Really, it's nothing. The betrayal of the elements within the institutional church, the government, the pharmaceutical. When I'm putting the cross on top of this chapel, where I'm 35 feet in the air, no scaffolding. And I asked the bishop, I'm like, "Do you want to put the cross up there?" I'm like, "We can get a bucket crane. You can go up there." He's like, "No." He's like, "You do it." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm up there 35 feet. And this is like the government's just like getting ready to charge me, call me a crook, a securities fraudster. This is incredible opposition. And yet, where is all that opposition today? It's all gone. Where are the billionaires? Where's the government? Where's the pharmaceutical industry? That company collapsed. There's a congressman who helped Brad Bondi. Brad Bondi actually ghostwritten this letter from him. His name is Duncan Under. Got sentenced to 11 months in prison. Like, all these things have disappeared. You know what I'm left with? These beautiful families. So many messages I get. I cannot possibly respond to them all. So if you message me on social media, I don't respond. Please don't take it personally. But the nonstop flow, even when I go back to Switzerland, and I go back often, we see on the security cameras, we put security cameras up because all these threats to the chapel. We see the faithful, they show up on Sunday just to be in front of the chapel. it really moves me to sadness, and it moves me to a sense of it was all worth it. That this was not without purpose. It was not without meaning. All of these fights, and so there's there really, to me, it's almost and miraculous that this chapel exists. And keep in mind, there was no support of a community, right? We're not like just brimming with Albanians and Greeks and Moldovan, like like you might be in the Boston area. And I look at those ministries, and they're very valid. They're important. The God has a different role for every priest, every presbyter. But when you go into one of the darkest places in the country, if not the world, where there's an open animosity against the cross, against Christ, and you're like, I'm just going to build a chapel. Like, the devil has other ideas, but it was worth it.
When did you open the doors? When was it finished?
Took way longer. When I first started, I'm like, yeah, this would be 6 months. Took us 3 years.
It took how many?
And we're still 3 years.
From the time you finished building to the time
from the time we started to the time we were finished.
Oh, okay, 3 years. Well,
yeah, 3 years. Just before COVID, in 2019, we started in October 2016, finished 2019. The setbacks were unbelievable. We still have some litigation. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, we had one country who stole all this copper, and constantly against me,
against you.
It's not technically a parish. It's a private chapel that I opened to the public.
What is the lawsuit?
There's been multiple with contractors. Because they stole from the chapel. One guy stole all this copper, and another country said, "We got to report that. It's a crime." Like, he's right. I got to report it. I asked him to bring it back. He went, "I don't have to report it. It's all stolen." And then just this sort of, the typical sort of, things that happen sometimes in building, they give you one price, they jack it up afterwards. Well, we can't do that. It's a church, we're not going to just be exploited. And so, I mean, just incredible. And like, other guys would come along and they would say, well, we're going to help this guy out. We'll sue him too. And they were open about it. They're just telling me openly, we're going to sue you because he's suing you. And, I've known him for a long time. And when I called the police, I said, well, this guy stole all this copper from the job site. He said, well, I know him. We've been friends for a long time. That's what the cop told me. But Daniel, it's kind of a curse Vermont brings on itself, because it's a lawless society now. And, you have to think of like Burlington is like a street. It's like the streets are painted like BLM letters, and there's a rainbow flags everywhere. But, they were one of the first to defund the police. And now it's like a lawless state. Like, people can't even go into Burlington anymore. It used to be this beautiful city. Like, the most beautiful street in Burlington was called Church Street, because there's a big, beautiful church there. And the Vermonters can't figure it out. The more they turn on the church and the cross, the more they curse themselves. And so the more they condone lawlessness and this sort of, and maybe in their mind, restorative justice, I don't know what they think it is, the more their own society is falling apart. Like I said, their birth rates fell off a cliff, and nobody has children. There's massive labor shortage. I always tell people that Vermont is the canary in the coal mine. If you want to know where liberal ideologies and anti-Christian ideologies lead to, visit Vermont. Not the postcard Vermont, not the one with the covered bridges and little red barns and the beautiful foliage in the fall and the maple syrup. That's nice if you go for a week. But if you really look at what's going on under the surface, it's dark, very dark. So, but then again, God is a just God. So I don't lose sleep at night over those things. There's all those people, like that same officer who told me I'm friends with him, I'm not going to do anything. Like, he was later publicly humiliated and it was removed from his position. So it's kind of like the Congressman Ligon. I mean, it really blows my mind, Daniel, that if you just try to respond to God's will and do what you think God is calling you to, God takes care of the evil. The evil self-destructs. You almost don't have to do anything. But anyways, the billionaire lawsuits, those ones, we beat all those. And they've mostly gone away. They're still trying to fight us on a wastewater permit, which is stupid. But, we took on, literally, they ganged up. There was 5 of them. 3 of them were billionaires. Unlimited went all the way to Supreme Court. They lost.
Supreme Court. Wow.
Yeah. Well, the Supreme Court of Vermont, to be clear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So quite a bit of darkness that you're battling. You got the light, and now how are people? I mean, some people are against it, but is there any stories you want to tell? The good side, the upside, the
upside is beautiful people. These stories, like the guy who goes to Canada, the monastery, the little woman Irini and her story. You wouldn't believe the beautiful families that show up there. We don't have any politics. There's no parish council. Maybe we should get those things. There's no gossip. It almost doesn't feel like a parish, right? It's just like this peaceful, beautiful thing. And this year a man showed up. Another beautiful story. I mean, I feel so blessed as a priest, to tell you the truth, Daniel. I feel like I won the priest lottery or something. This man shows up and with his wife, and
she wants to be chrismated. And he says to me, Father, I spent 5 years on Mount Athos when I was a child. And he showed me pictures. He grew up on Mount Athos. He said, I've been in Vermont all these years and I couldn't find a church. He said, and I found out about St. Catherine's. And he came, now he's a sexton in the altar. And with my son, when my son is here. And he's, it just the stories. He brought me all these beautiful beeswax candles. He said, my mother gave these to me. And she said, when you find a church, give this to them. And so not because of me, but because of St. Catherine, I'm seeing these things that to me are almost like miraculous, these stories of faith, these humble stories of faith. And now local people are coming. So the opposition has pretty much died down at this point. There's still some minor litigation. But now the local people are coming and they're asking questions about orthodoxy and they're learning and it's blowing my mind. People who are completely unchurched, they never really had no idea what the Orthodox Church is. Now they're learning the creedal statements and Our Father, and they're asking about baptism. And there's no way we could fit everyone in the church at the same time. And so it's been such a privilege, actually, Daniel. It just makes it, like I said, it just made it all worth it, seeing sort of how this chapel has affected people and seeing people from around the country, literally, Father, I'm coming from Florida, Father, I'm coming, and they bring gifts. One man brought all these beautiful hand-carved olive wood crosses. And another man brought me a beautiful cross. And everyone brings, the bishop gave us the gospel and the Themiato, the censer, and this other wonderful priest, Father Gvozdev. He passed away, unfortunately. He was in Florida, a Russian priest, actually. And just a very magnificent man. And he left vestments in the altar, and he brought the patent and the chalice. And so I see all these people, their love and the movement of the Holy Spirit, their desire to follow Christ. And it's really incredibly powerful, Daniel. I feel like I'm not doing an adequate job conveying it in words because I don't really have the words for it.
Mm-hmm. So you've just finished this. You basically recently, well, not too recently, but relatively recently, you built this church in Vermont. And you told me also that you have plans to build a church in Switzerland. What's the story?
Yeah, I started putting some concepts together to build another one in Switzerland, St. Sophia's, and crazy. It was like the patriarch stopped me on it. My bishop's like, hey, the patriarch doesn't want you to do that. I'm like, really? So he's like, yeah, you got to go to Constantinople first. So I put that on hold for now.
Okay. I don't know. Why would they want to stop it?
I don't know. I mean, maybe they have a good reason. Who knows? I don't know. I just said, okay. They know best.
All right.
But I want to build a couple. I'm thinking about building one in Maine. Maybe
Really?
a St. Isidora's. Yeah. Maine's beautiful. You've been to the Maine coast, like down East Maine?
I haven't.
So I feel like these chapels should be built in beautiful places. Like, have you been to Ticino in Switzerland? It's like magnificent. Like, by the way, talk about a resurgence. The Serbians and the Romanians, they're really injecting orthodoxy into this like otherwise spiritual vacuum in Switzerland, because the Catholics in the south of Switzerland, like, they're so disenfranchised. They don't. The Catholic Church is spiritually bankrupt. I feel like this schism happened because Orthodoxy would save Christianity, and you just see like, while Christianity collapses in Western Europe and France and the UK, and they're turning their churches into mosques and the cafeterias, restaurants, whatever, I don't know, whatever they can do to defile the church. Like the Orthodox, they're so pious. They're coming from Romania and Serbia and so forth. And they're incredibly, I mean, some of the finest, and the Russians too. There's a Russian church in Ticino, and I'm just blown away by these communities. And I've had a privilege to serve in them with the bishop's blessing, of course. And, I feel very fortunate in that sense too, because, Dan, I've had a chance to see Orthodoxy around the world. From Hong Kong, where they literally have dragons on their petrachili. I'm like, no way. That's like Bruce Lee vestments. To, Constantinople, where, the population is shrinking, unfortunately, but they have this sort of incredibly rich history, this sort of heart of Orthodoxy in Constantinople too, serving in the hospitals in Greece and then being in Italy and realizing so much of Byzantium is in Italy. People think it's a Catholic country. You go into parts of Italy, every church looks Orthodox. And seeing the Catholics who are like, yeah, we've lost the faith. And then like seeing the Orthodox bring it back to them, because, Switzerland's a very diverse country. There's 4 different national languages. There's the Swiss German, and there's the Italian part, and there's the French part, and there's Romansh. And just being able to see and serve from Geneva to Lugano to Venice, being in the magnificent cathedral in Venice. Have you seen the cathedral in Venice? Just in serving with the Metropolitan there. And I don't know. I mean, I must have done something right in my life because I just feel like I've been so privileged to see the magnificent beauty and diversity of Orthodoxy around the world. And it's enriched me so much. And the faithful and the hierarchs I've had a privilege to meet, and the other clergy I've had a privilege to meet have just enriched me so incredibly much.
What is the idea with the parish in Switzerland? You can't serve as a priest there and in Vermont. Would you?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's true, but I guess every priest has a different role, and if God finds me worthy and strong enough, if I live long enough, I think establishing Orthodox churches, again, churches that look Orthodox, is important. And I think there will be and there is already a revival taking place in Switzerland because they have some of the same things that Vermont has. They have death tourism, they have sarcopods, they have some really dark things that come mostly from the German part of Switzerland. The Ticino, the Italian part of Switzerland, is magnificently beautiful, by the way. They don't have so much of that because they still have a remembrance of their Catholic identity, but it's so lost. So what they do, because their churches are so beautiful and magnificently preserved. I mean, you want to see beauty, you got to go in some of these Baroque churches in Switzerland, but they're not being used at all. They're empty. They're like museum pieces. So they're like, well, we don't want the Muslims to move in like the UK or France, so we'll just let the Orthodox use them. And that's what I did when I went back to Lugano. I got a beautiful Baroque church from the local magistrate, the person who's they don't call him proto-singularist in the Catholic Church. I forget what they call him, but anyways, he said, yeah, take this chapel. It's beautiful, like 500-year-old church and magnificent. So the Orthodox are moving in and utilizing these houses of worship and making them Orthodox. The one church the Serbians have in Bellinzona, which is the city of castles, this beautiful city about 20 minutes outside of Lugano, with all these castles on the hill, they actually were able to get permission to establish a iconostation, an icon screen, because usually the Swiss don't recognize, not usually, they don't recognize the Orthodox churches. So it's sort of like an unwritten law that you can convert these into Orthodox churches if you're very careful, because only they by law, they only recognize the Catholic and Protestant churches. But because the country's become like a spiritual vacuum, they know that if they don't do something, they're going to lose their Christian identity completely. And it's the Orthodox that are filling the void. So really, really interesting country in that sense.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember hearing about that they had a problem with Orthodoxy not being allowed in the Philippines because it wasn't recognized as one of the
state religions.
Yeah. So is there? I'm gonna start winding the interview down a little bit, but was there something that we missed? Anything else that you'd like to talk about? Was there another subject or maybe a question you wish I had asked?
Well, I'm not sure. Is there anything you'd like to ask?
I think I've covered for the most part my what we wanted to talk about. I do have one more question that I ask all clergy when I have them on my show. And that question is, could you leave us with a word of advice, or as they say, a word to live by?
Well, you know, when I was undergoing all these trials, which seemed insurmountable, probably to the outside world, I remember talking again to my bishop of Blessed Mary Metropolitan Ilia Katri. And he just said to me, he said, it's a fight, isn't it? Meaning life. You know, I don't care too much for the nice guy personality types. You know, you meet all these Protestant pastors, they seem like really nice guys. I don't care for nice. Like, it's a fight. You're going to follow Christ? Yeah, Christ says, take up your cross and follow me. What do you think that means? It's be nice. Make s'mores, sing kumbaya. You know, hold hands. You get serious about your faith. You're a young guy. You think about the Catholic. You think about the Orthodox Church, the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Get ready. You're going to fight, and don't give up. Never give up. You just keep going forward. You get knocked down, get right back up. Don't even bat an eye. Because if God is with you, who can be against you? And then the mysteries of God's love will eventually open to you. You may not see it in real time. You can be like, this kind of sucks. Like for me, I was debanked, blacklisted. I couldn't even open a bank account because of what the government accused me of. Imagine that. A guy who can't open a bank account is building a church. You know, Melania Trump, she was debanked. They do bad things, the government. They're powerful, sort of. But in a way, they're really not powerful. All the sources of evil in the world you see, Daniel, the darkness, it's only an illusion of strength. There's no strength apart from the cross. Evil never has any power over you unless you give it that power. Remember that. Whether it's a psychological fight you're fighting, an emotional one, a spiritual, whatever, or some combination of all three. Fight, because like the bishop said, it's a fight. So be honest with yourself. Go into it with your eyes wide open. And when those proverbial scales fall from your eyes, to quote St. Paul, and you see the world for what it really is, you realize the lies of the evil one. Only the illusion of power cannot have any real power unless you give it to it. But pray constantly. Pray without ceasing, like your life depends on it. And that darkness, whatever it is, the government, the pharmaceutical industry, billionaires, the whole world gangs up on you. It means nothing. They have no power. The only power is in the cross.
The only power is in the cross. Father Emmanuel, thank you so much for being a guest on my channel. And I would like to end with one more video that you sent me. This is the one of blessing the ground. I meant to cue this up at the beginning of the stream, but I played the wrong video. Well, not the video I intended to, but so the first shall be last and the last shall be first here. We're going to play that video as we end the stream. So once again, thank you, Father Emmanuel. Would you like for people to follow you? Is anything else you'd like to say about where to follow you and all
well,
that?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, Daniel, really a privilege to join your show. I'm so glad that you invited me. So thank you for that. I love your show, and I think very highly of you. I really, I applaud who you are and your strength. If to the extent you do want to follow us on social media, usually the handle is @Lemelson, my last name, Lemelson. So and X, it's @Lemelson, where we post quite frequently. On YouTube, it's the same @Lemelson. Our podcast is a very visual podcast. I know a lot of people like to listen to podcasts, but we usually have a lot of text on the screen and stuff. It's worth watching it to the extent you're interested. It is a nascent podcast, like you said. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook. We have a growing following on Facebook as well. So, it would be hard to miss. We're kind of trying to be everywhere, and God willing, hopefully we'll contribute something positive to the world.
Yes, so please, like I said, Father Emmanuel has a very high-level perspective on what's going on in the world. So there's a link to his YouTube channel below, and the algorithm does not necessarily push out Orthodox content, so I want you to subscribe. Go subscribe to his channel, share it with people, try to spread the word. And with that,
I'm going to very true what you said. Thank you for that. That's very true.
Yep. So with that, I'm going to play this last video as an outro to today's stream. So have a great day, everybody. Here we go.